The Bucs get an ugly win thanks to the performance of rookie Emeka Egbuka. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you 5 days a week along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. It's been a long time since we've done one of these, but you guys know how it goes on a Victory Sunday / Monday. Biggest takeaways and game balls coming up in a little bit. I'm going to start this one off with the biggest moment in the game, and there were a couple to choose from. I told the insiders when it happened that I was going to come back to Baker missing Cade Otton on that wide open pass as the biggest moment if the Bucs didn't go on to win the game. Then there was Chase McLaughlin's missed field goal and missed extra point that could have given the Bucs a 7-point lead instead of just 3 late in the game. But both of those pale in comparison to what Emeka Egbuka did at the end of this one. On 1st and 10 at the Falcons 25, following a roughing the passer penalty, Emeka was one-on-one with Mike Hughes, who he beat for a touchdown in the first half, and he absolutely roasted him for a second time in the game, got into the end zone and gave the Bucs a 23-20 lead after the Bucs gave up a touchdown to Penix following an 18-play, 91-yard drive that took 8 minutes and 46 seconds in the fourth quarter. The other thing I told the insiders, I think I tweeted it out. It's all kind of running together now, but I didn't have much faith in Baker to orchestrate that kind of drive following his performance for much of the day. He was missing open players. He was forcing bad throws, and he was lucky he didn't throw a couple of interceptions. And all of this behind a makeshift offensive line that got moved around right before the game started. With that said, when it mattered most, Baker did what Baker does, and he got the Bucs down the field. It took 1 minute and 18 seconds, and Baker went 4 for 6 on the drive for 63 yards and the score. What was even more impressive was the calmness of Egbuka in that moment. Now, he's an Ohio State guy, so his college career was never short on big moments, but the last time he was in that stadium, it was to win a national championship. The game was on the line, and his number was the one that got called. I cannot speak enough about his composure and ability to make that play happen. I talked about it from the crossover through the end of the week. The Bucs had to exploit the matchup between Egbuka and Mike Hughes. That was the corner they needed to attack. Egbuka was the guy that was going to be lined up against him most of the time. Hughes gives up Abuka's first 2 touchdowns of his career, and the latter ends up being the one that costs Atlanta the game. I'll also say this. Bonus biggest moment came from Antoine Himfield Jr. with 16 seconds left in the game. The Falcons were at the Tampa 26, and Penix took a shot towards the end zone to Casey Washington, and Washington was wide open, like almost as open as Otton was earlier in the game. And Winfield came screaming in, blasted Washington to not only break up the pass, but that saved the game. That was a touchdown. Washington, had he caught the ball, would have walked in for a score, and the Falcons would have broken the hearts of Bucs fans for a 3rd consecutive time dating back to last year. Big players make big plays in big moments. Egbuka and Winfield answered the call on both sides in crunch time, and those two were able to put the Bucs up over the top. I'll also say this, because credit where credit is due, I was impressed by Penix. He was much better than I thought he was going to be, and the trouble with him was how fast he got the ball out of his hand. There were not a lot of opportunities for the Bucs to get a sack in this one because of how quickly Penix would unload the ball. Diaby had one early in the game that was negated by a Jamel Dean penalty, and then Hassan Reddick gets his first sack as a Buck. It was a big one that forced Atlanta to kick a field goal. But by the time the pressure was getting there, Penix was getting rid of the ball. And I think it honestly made him a more effective quarterback. It seemed like the more time he had, the worse the throw was. When he was quick and decisive, he was right on target. So I also wonder how different things would have or could have gone had Drake London been available on that final drive. He was giving Dean fits for most of the day, and not having him out there was obviously a blow to the Falcons. I would like to think that the outcome would have been the same, but that's also kind of like saying the Bucs trying to win the game at the end would be the same if Mike Evans hadn't been on the field. But the Bucs were far from their best in this game. They still found a way to get the win. That's what good teams do. This wasn't a good Bucs team, but they were good enough, and that's all that mattered. I was texting with one of the insiders before the game even started, and he said, I don't care if this is the ugliest game I have ever seen in my life, as long as the Bucs get the W. And we were chatting afterwards. It was like, yeah, it was ugly, but the Bucs got the win. This is not the same roster that is going to take the field when these two teams play again. Tristan Wirfs is going to be back. Chris Godwin is going to be back. Jalen McMillan is going to be back. You're probably going to have different starters in the secondary. And even as poorly as Baker looked, you have to wonder if that was the rust from not playing in the preseason. Was it the Falcons defense being that much more disruptive? Was it the changes along the offensive line, which Todd Bowles told the media after the game was a look that they've worked with the last 2 weeks at practice, and the decision was made based on how confident they were in Barton on the left side, and that he's a hellacious run blocker, and that this alignment is what they felt gave them the best chance to win this game. And I get it. Barton was a left tackle at Duke. That was certainly a shock to pretty much everyone when they moved everyone, they moved that entire left side of the line around. But again, this goes back to preseason. We never got Baker out there. We never saw this alignment take live snaps together. And I think that's where some of the rust and some of the miscommunication really came from. I've seen a lot of people already calling out Grizz for the play calling. I thought the play calling was fine. The execution wasn't there, and there were more than a few passes that Baker missed or forced. He missed Otten and Evans, who were both open on deep shots that likely would have resulted in touchdowns. That's the stuff that's going to get cleaned up and worked out as they continue. But I thought Grizz overall called a good game. They just didn't execute it the way that they would have had this been in week 6 or week 7, and they'd gotten a little bit more into a rhythm. Fausto, I thought it was you. Fausto saying I was that insider. I had a lot of conversations going on with a lot of different people all throughout the game. So I didn't want to misapply that conversation to anyone, but Fausto jumping in there saying, it was him. So destined for greatness. Defense has to capitalize on opportunities. Too many missed layups. Got to get better. I agree wholeheartedly. The defense left some plays out there on the field, but they also clamped down and helped this team get a big win. Let's see. Demon Hunter, bold prediction. Dean gets traded at the deadline and Morrison gets 6 interceptions to finish the season. I don't think they're trading Dean. That's a conversation we can get into a little bit later. Maybe, if and when that change at starter happens. But I think given the way the roster is constructed, the depth that you have in the secondary right now, you're not going to trade Dean away for just a draft pick. If you're trading him away, you're going to get another piece in the secondary in return. I think getting rid of him altogether during the season is going to create too thin of depth there in the secondary. Let's see. We got Danny. Cam Johnson, big swing and momentum plus field position change. Yes, Cam Johnson was huge on that punt return. Spoiler alert, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. All right, biggest takeaways, that is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every single day, but on PrizePicks, being right means cashing in. With football back, PrizePicks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. It's quick, it's easy, and honestly, my favorite way to follow along with football. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL, for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Hey, Locked On Bucs fans, are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas that you already needed. At first, I thought it was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. With as much as I travel for my son's hockey, those savings really start to roll in. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN for a limited time 25-cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code TOUCHDOWN. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every single day. Biggest takeaway on the offensive side of the ball, it's not even close to time to panic about their performance. We've already addressed some of the problems that we saw against the Falcons. Baker was off. He looked bad. And I'm going to stand by my belief in all the things that I said over the course of the last month, that he should have gotten preseason snaps. But overall, it wasn't the kind of performance that had me questioning whether or not this team can still have one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL. The run game was, it was pretty decent. Bucky finished with 14 for 37. That's not great. Rashad had a couple of nice runs. There were also a couple of nice runs that were negated by a penalty. Egbuka had a nice run on the jet sweep, there in the fourth quarter. Baker led the game, not just the Bucs, but the entire game in rushing with 5 carries for 39 yards. Evans was Mike Evans, 5 for 51, some crucial first down catches. Shep was outstanding. 3 big-time receptions when the Bucs really needed them, and he extended drives. He got a crucial third down catch right before Emeka Egbuka scored the winning touchdown. Bucky and Rashad both involved in the run game, or in the pass game, including Bucky's first career touchdown reception. And special shout out to Egbuka again for throwing a block to spring Bucky just free enough that he could dive and lay out to get that ball inside the pylon and score that touchdown. I don't think it was a bad debut for Grizz the Wiz. Again, I think he called a good game considering what he was dealing with up front, and the execution was just lacking. This is a performance that they can build on. When it mattered most, Baker, Grizz, and the rest of the offense answered the call and made the plays that they needed to win. The Falcons defense was relentless in their pass rush all game long. They were extra aggressive during that 2-minute drill in the fourth quarter. They tried to take advantage of that offensive line, and those guys stood up to the task. They handled business on the one drive that the Bucs really, really needed it. It's not going to get any easier against the Texans next week, but this is something that they can sit down, they can review the film, see where they can get better, where they can make some adjustments to make the offense more efficient. Certainly not a game where I'm sounding the alarms and saying that they got the OC choice wrong or anything like that. If Baker makes a couple of better throws or a couple of better decisions, we are talking about a much different outcome in this game. On the defensive side, there's still way too many mental mistakes. It looked way too much like the defense of last season. Dean was getting beat and making costly mistakes. I will say he made a great play late in the game to break up a touchdown pass to Drake London, but was not an overall great game from him. The secondary as a whole did not look very good. Zion, dude, you just got paid and you had 2 interceptions hit you right in the hands and then hit the ground. Granted, one of them would have been overturned because of a roughing the passer penalty on Vita Vea, but you have to bring those in. You are now being paid as a top corner. You have to perform like one. That means getting those takeaways and flipping the field. He did have some other nice plays. He had a great tackle for loss, had a couple of pass breakups, but you have to come away with those interceptions if you're going to be the CB1 of the future, which is what they just paid you to do. The pass rush wasn't great, but I don't think it was really bad either. Talked about it at the top of the show. Penix did an absolutely fantastic job of getting rid of the ball quickly. Reddick and Diaby both played pretty well, but when you only have 2 seconds to get into the backfield, you're not going to be able to get to the quarterback. Again, Reddick had a sack. Diaby had a sack that was overturned, but my goodness, the biggest problem was the penalties. This was mental mistake after mental mistake. You cannot give teams free yards and first downs like you did for the Falcons in the fourth quarter of this game. 2, not 1, 2 different roughing the passer calls, and I'm not even going to get into the roughing call that didn't happen when Baker got hit in the face after a whistle. I know Jonathan Vilma was on the broadcast going, the whistle didn't blow. They're playing through. No, the whistle blew multiple times, and we heard it on the broadcast. That's not totally Vilma's fault. He's not hearing his own broadcast, but the whistle was clear. Anyway, I'm going to go on a tangent. I'm going to step away. So many horrendous mental mistakes that gave the Falcons new life time and time again. The Bucs finished with 5 penalties for 60 yards. 2 of those penalties and half of those yards were on an 18-play touchdown drive that gave the Falcons the lead late in the game. Then there was a holding penalty and an incomplete pass by Atlanta on 4th and goal of that drive, but that was negated by a Jamel Dean defensive holding penalty. So the defense could have gotten off the field. Even with all those mistakes, they could have gotten off the field, but another bad penalty by Dean gave the Falcons a second chance, and then they capitalized on that play and took the lead. You just can't expect to compete with the top teams in the NFL if you're beating yourselves. You cannot have these kinds of penalties in crunch time when you're looking to your defense to shut down a game, and then they keep making those terrible, terrible mistakes. That has to be cleaned up before next week. The Texans offense will make you pay dearly if you make these kinds of mistakes. And the way they're playing on Sunday, or played on Sunday, gives me some optimism that the pass rush is going to look a whole heck of a lot better than it did on Atlanta. But again, I don't think that they played poorly. I just don't think they had much opportunity. But CJ Stroud got absolutely beaten to death by the Rams defense on Sunday. Going to jump into the chat again. Tones in the chat says, "You're right, sir, but we will get better and better and better. Hope you agree." I absolutely agree. Go Bucs 1911. Penix barely got touched in the helmet, got a flag. Baker got clubbed in the back of the head and no call. Yeah, I mean, Baker's helmet came off. That shove was so high. Scotty J in the chat, the holding on Barton was crap too. I agree. It was not a great showing by the officiating crew there in Atlanta. I was going to come completely unglued if they overturned that touchdown that Drake London dropped. Granted, it would have helped me in fantasy, but I would have come completely unglued given the angles that we had and the way that that play transpired. I just absolutely would have lost my mind. Lakita, who was at the game, first touchdown by the Falcons, shocked us out of our socks. Yeah, I mean, it was not a play that should have gone for 50 yards. Honestly, it shouldn't have. You had Servassier Dennis, who did not have a great showing. We'll talk more about him on tomorrow's show. After he got relegated to the bench, he stepped up and he had a good couple of drives. But as soon as Dennis missed that tackle, there was nobody down the field that was going to be able to stop Bijan Robinson from getting into the end zone on that one. I was pretty stunned too, but the Bucs were finally able to answer back. All right, game balls are coming up next. That is next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. Right now, you can grab tickets to the Bucs home opener against the Jets with those epic 1976 throwbacks on full display for under $100. And it's not just sports. I'm not kidding when I tell you I just got concert tickets for my son and I with a zone deal. And let me just say, I have not paid that little for a concert ticket in over 20 years. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Wrapping things up here on a Victory Sunday, Victory Monday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. For those of you that are new to the show, excuse me, or you don't remember, here's how we do this after wins. After losses, we don't hand out game balls, but after wins, we do. All of you, start dropping your game balls in the chat. I'm going to give 2 on each side of the ball, but the first one that I give out is the golden game ball that goes to the overall player of the game. Absolutely, no doubt, no question who this one is going to. Golden game ball, Emeka Egbuka. 4 receptions, 67 yards, 2 touchdowns, plus 1 carry for 9 yards. He was absolutely fantastic. He had an early drop on his first target. I don't even know if you'd really categorize it as a drop, but for Egbuka, it's a drop. It would have been a tough catch, but it's one that he expects himself to make. Baker talked about trusting Egbuka in those big moments early on after the game. And it's because, as Baker said, he doesn't play, prepare, or act like a rookie. I told you, hammer the over on Egbuka's 57.5-yard prop line. He didn't quite get close to that 100-yard performance that I was expecting, but he made his 4 receptions count in a massive way. Also, another big shout out for his blocking in the run game. If the NFL did stats the way the NHL does, Egbuka would have had 2 touchdowns and an assist. Big season coming for that young man. Game ball number 2, and the first one on the defensive side of the ball, it's Antoine Winfield Jr. It was a somewhat quiet game, but he made the biggest defensive play of the day by breaking up that pass to Casey Washington that would have won the game for Atlanta. Finished with just 4 tackles and a pass breakup, but that pass breakup proved to be the difference in this one. Just like Egbuka, he made the number of plays that he made impactful. It wasn't just volume, it was substance. Game ball number 3. All right, I could go Mike Evans. I could go Bucky Irving. But I'm going with another guy that didn't make many plays. But the one that he did was massive. Cam Johnson, sir, I owe you an apology. Truly, I do. I said that I didn't understand why he made the 53-man roster when that was announced. And then I doubled down. I doubled down on this young man when the depth chart was released. And I said I didn't like that he was listed as the starting kick and punt returner. On Sunday, we saw why he made the roster and was the starting returner. After the Bucs missed a field goal on their opening drive of the second half, the defense held the Falcons to -7 yards on their opening drive of the half, and Pinion booted one 59 yards. Cam Johnson said, "Watch this." And he returned it all the way to the Atlanta 32 for a 54-yard return. It gave the Bucs offense a spark, and they would go on to score a Bucky Irving touchdown 5 plays later. That was so huge for the Bucs to get that return and immediately at least be in range for McLaughlin to make up for his miss the drive before. Leading to a touchdown made it even better. Cam Johnson, I award you a game ball, and I please ask for your forgiveness for doubting you. Game ball number 4, the second one on the defensive side of the ball, it goes to the other safety, Tyke Smith. He had a really solid game, led the team in tackles, had a big pass breakup, and was flying all over the field. He answered the call when Zion McCollum left with injury down by the goal line. Bowles moved Tyke right back to that nickel spot. Parrish bounced to the outside, and then they sent Kayvon Merriweather into the game as the other safety. Really solid game from Tyke. Did everything that you would have wanted him to do, everything that he was asked for, and it's a good start to his first full season as the starting safety opposite of Winfield Jr. He was one of the brighter spots for this defense consistently throughout the game. All right, going to jump into the chat and see who you guys are giving game balls to. Lots of Egbukas in here, as there should be. Lakita says no game ball for the refs. Absolutely not. Let's see. We got Scotty J gives a game ball to Barton for having Baker's blind side. I like that one a lot. Kind of an under the radar with all the crazy changes that they had. Let's see. We got a couple of Cam Johnsons in there. Lakita says yes on Tyke. Richard says Bucs fans know about Pinion out kicking the coverage. He certainly did do that against the Bucs on Sunday. We've got yes on Tyke in there. Ooh, Cecil. I like this one. Riley Dixon deserves one. You know what, Cecil? I'm going to agree with you. I thought it was a really good game from Dixon. I think he's going to end up being a really, really, important signing. We talked about it in the preseason that, Riley Dixon is going to go down as an underrated signing for the Bucs for this season. I didn't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm going to go ahead and bring it up. Riley Dixon, 4 punts, averaged 51.3 on his punts, had 2 of them inside the 20, had a long of 62. I absolutely love that pick. Shout out to you, Cecil. Vincent says Dean tried his best to mess up. He wasn't great. And just to piggyback, I see Danny in there talking about it. How nice it was to see Riley Dixon take the field and not be concerned about whether or not it was going to be a good punt, right? We had a lot of concerns last year continuously with some of these punters that the Bucs trotted out there. So that was really nice. But of course, now I'm a little nervous. Are we going to have the kicker issue again? Are we going to be, holding our breath every time Chase McLaughlin walks onto the field? I don't think so. I think Chase is good enough to kind of get over this, put it behind him, put it in the rearview mirror, and be back to being the kicker that he was last year. I hope it doesn't become an issue with him, because he was so automatic for the Bucs last year that we were all excited that he was going to be back again. He signed the big contract. He was going to be a reliable piece. Missing a field goal and an extra point, not great. Not great in this one. Going to last couple of comments here. Fausto says, tough to give out game balls for this one. It was, just because outside of Egbuka, there weren't really any standout overall performances, but there were enough moments that made such a massive difference that the first two were actually really easy to give out. And then beyond that, I looked for consistency. I looked for the guys that didn't make the mental mistakes, didn't give up the big play, which is why Cam Johnson got one for that electric return. And then Tyke was about as consistent as you would have gotten on the defense in this one, outside of really Levante David, because Levante is always Levante. And then last comment, because we got to get out of here. Demon Hunter, only team in the South to come out with a win. That is how we like to see things, when the only team coming out of the South with a win is the Bucs. That's right. 1-0 start for the Buccaneers. I want to thank all of you for jumping into the live chat and the live show. You guys are the absolute best. Let's have ourselves one heck of a season. Please check out everything going on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube with the notifications turned on, so you can jump in these live chats every time we go live, as well as wherever you get your podcast. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. If you want to support the show, but you don't want to be an insider, it's real simple. Like this episode on YouTube, leave a 5-star review wherever you get podcasts. It does help other Buccaneers fans find the show. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.